Well, welcome to the Wealthy Warlock. This is my first video, and I'm glad that you could join me for it. What a title and a subject we are breaching today. This is going to be the first in a hopefully long series of presents here on YouTube, and we'll see how it goes. But to start with, we're going to touch on some pretty staple subjects in order to be able to build upon these things further later in videos. So I will start by doing a bit of a reference mini-series to get you prepared for what we're going to get into, and I hope to take you some places that is relatively uncharted. So let's go. First of all, like I said, welcome to the Wealthy Warlock. That's me. I'm the Wealthy Warlock, otherwise known as, born as Trevor Popple, birthed as Trevor Popple, I should say. I feel like my kind of true essence is much more Kenaru. My business, my current business head or image is the Wealthy Warlock. The Wealthy Warlock simply because I do magic, and I work magic with source. I work source so it looks like it's magic, but it's not. I take a very scientific point of view. I take a very experientially scientific point of view, not so much a conventional mainstream medical journal point of view. While I do use many documents and many references from medical journals, I pick and choose which ones very carefully, because I'm aware of the fact that there are many people out there who reveal the obvious flaws within the peer-reviewed published journal platform that we have that regulates what we call science. It's turned it into a dogma, and as such, I'm going to take it completely out of a perspective for a group of people to agree with, and I'm going to put science back on individual experience. And the reason why is because the magic that I work with is the core essence of everything, the source of us all, you, me, everything. And as such, I recognize that our experience is probably the most defining factor of what we could justify as real and what we could justify as not real. As a really bad way of defining things. Yeah, before we get too far in, we'll keep moving on. The three minds, I want to start with that. The three minds are something I came across with my late fiancée Ari Carla through her studies of NLP. Now, the three minds model is a very common approach to handling what we call the human brain. Just generally, physically, we recognize that we've got three parts, biologically speaking, from the brainstem to the core aspect of the brain to the grey matter then that makes up what we are, different from our primitive family members, as some would say. And I'm going to break apart all of these societal presumptions, such as evolution. Yes, evolution, from bits and pieces as we go through these videos. So I'm starting, hopefully, to keep it centered around this beginning subject so we can focus on that, all get on the same page together, and then go running off into wherever this takes us. I don't know. I'm sure you don't know. Let's enjoy it together. So the three minds generally, in reference to the NLP model of thinking, is a common verbiage model, which is conscious, subconscious, and superconscious. Right? A lot of people interject superconscious with other terms, higher self, soul. There's a whole range of terms. I'll get to that in a second. But we'll start at the bottom. Our conscious mind, otherwise known as the prefrontal cortex. I'm pretty sure it's prefrontal cortex. The biological matter. The scientific terminology for specific names and words do come out pretty well most of the time, but I can have pretty random blocks sometimes. And that's because I don't sit there in a schoolyard environment and repeat these words hundreds of times a day in useless fashion just to be able to memorize every little fact. The things that I know are known, and they fall in between what we call reality. But the problem is what we call reality isn't actually reality. It's only bits and pieces of it. And so then we find out that the bits and pieces that I'm fully into are actually the underlying aspects of reality, and then we construct our bits and pieces on top of that. We'll get to more of that. Conscious mind usually is defined by our conscious awareness, our mode of thinking. When somebody asks us, who are you, or can you point to yourself, we say things like, I'm me, or I'm myself, or I'm Trevor, or I'm whatever. I am I. Well, the next question is, well, where are you? What is this I that you speak of? People would point to the spot here beside the head, the temple, and say, I'm in here. Where we know that that's not quite as accurate as we might have previously thought. All we need to do is look at some older cultures to bring into question whether or not our thoughts are ourselves or not, because that's usually what we identify when we point to our mind. We say, I'm up here, because we have these thoughts in our head and we think that we're our thoughts. Well, just for one, the ancient Egyptians actually had 6 senses, and the 6th sense was thought. So from the word get-go, from the moment that they were born, they knew that their thoughts were not themselves, that they themselves had these things called thoughts. And there's a huge difference between the two of them. Just growing up in most of our modern day societies, if you try to bring up a question with your parents, they'll probably end up saying something like, oh, it's the same thing anyway. It's basically the same thing. That's only because we come from a society that really has trouble acknowledging and administering any sort of what we call physical reality. So there's clearly a whole bunch of stuff out there that we're unaware of, okay? We'll get into that a bit more in a moment. The subconscious mind is more of a record keeper. Does a lot more than the conscious mind, keeps track of pretty much everything. I mean, if you're saying you're you might as well say your subconscious mind. When you say something like, I really like being happy. I really like it when people smile. I really like bringing joy to people. These things, well, actually, I like those things because, like I said, I'm experiential. And so as I experience these things, as I do these things and I experience the result of them, they confirm my reality. And so I consider myself my own being in that right, because I've gone through, and I'm still going through the finer points of my programming system, and I'm taking out the programs that were installed by other people, and I'm putting in programs that are either agreed on by me or denied by me, and then modified and recorrected and put back in place by me. So I'm in the process of going through my entire subconscious library and cultivating the information to make sure that it's not only relevant, but it's from my perspective, it is from my experience. There's a huge barrier between the two front and back side of the mind, your subconscious mind and your conscious mind. Your conscious mind is severely limited in its ability to process information. They say anywhere between 3 and 7, 8 bits of information, and that depends on how much training or development you've had in your awareness on a daily basis. So if you play something like video games, or do something that has a lot of information that's consistently needing to be checked and checked again, then you're likely to pick up a lot more bits of information at one time than other people will be. Bits of information could be tiny bits, could be a single particle, or it could be a generic thing. So this room that I'm sitting in at the moment, while I'm discussing matters with you, it's generally in my field of awareness as one room, not all the individual bits and pieces in it. They're colloquially grouped in together because it's on the field of my, on the barrier of my field of awareness, as opposed to at the core of my awareness right here. So it's getting a little bit of detail, but it's not getting a whole bunch. Now, outside of that range, even less, if not none at all. Aside from the fact that there's walls there, and we usually consider that to be the limit of our awareness. Again, the physical thing, and yeah, we know physical matter doesn't exactly exist. So it's a perplexing conundrum that we find ourselves in, to be refined and justified by a physical reality that doesn't exist. Makes a lot of sense. Could be why we are having such problems nowadays. Maybe. I've got to remember to keep some of my jokes under wraps. Don't worry, you'll get them. There's plenty of time for that. But some of them might be a little bit too preemptive for some of our audience members. Now, the three minds: conscious, your subconscious, bits of information on your conscious. Now, when you have a maximum range of information that you're fielding with, and you try to incorporate one more, you're likely to drop one of those bits out of your awareness in order to be able to pick up this new one. So you're paying attention to me. You might be aware of the room that you're in. If you've got a pet with you, like a cat, it's probably annoyingly trying to sit on your keyboard or something. You're probably aware of it too. You're aware of a few different things, and whatever is relevant to you, I'm sure you're aware of that. Just take a moment and acknowledge these things, all right? Now, as a little experiment, can you feel the underwear on you? Now, I chose that one specifically because, you might not be wearing a t-shirt. Maybe you're just wearing nothing. I was going to say socks. Maybe you're not wearing socks. I'm pretty sure most people wear underwear most of the time. Anyway, it's probably a lot more common than, say, socks, for instance. Anyway, when I said, you're aware of your underwear, you then refocus your awareness to be able to include that information, and now all of a sudden you are. So you're aware of it. I mean, you were aware of it the whole time, but the difference is that it was back here, and now you've just done the whole switchity route. So you've taken one of the bits of information here, chucked it back there, and then pulled a bit of information back out here and gone, okay, now we're updated. Let's keep going. This can get problematic, especially when you're looking for things like car keys. You're running around the place and you got your car keys, and then you put your car keys down because you got to do something. Car keys go behind you, out into your subconscious, and then you keep looking around going, okay, well, I've done that, or I've got to go to the loo, or do up my shoes, or I've got to go get my bag, or whatever. And then you come back and you go, okay, now where are my keys? And you can't find them. Until you drop one of those bits of information that you're holding in your conscious awareness, that's when you'll be able to pick up the information or the location of the keys. Now, how that happens is completely up to you and can happen in a spectrum of, we'll say, infinity. Generally, when I'm talking about the differences between people, I'll say things like an infinite array of possibilities, but that's simply because I recognize the potentials of uniqueness within the superorganism of humanity to be individually expressed in an infinite multitude of potentials. That's the wonderful thing about being unique, is that we're all going to be different. And it's fantastic, because otherwise it'd be really boring. And I wouldn't be here talking to you. So, conscious mind, subconscious mind, bits of information. Your subconscious mind deals with all bits of information. So while you're running around the place pretending that you're on top of the world, oh yes, I'm thinking this and I'm deciding that, and it's a good thing that I can think like that too, your subconscious mind is busy there going and recording everything all around you, even the things that are not directly in front of you. let's say you have a TV on behind you and no mirror or no phone in front of you so you can see behind you. The programs playing on the TV, even if it's on mute, will still be picked up by your conscious awareness, your subconscious. If it's on mute and it's on the tiniest little volume, you can pick that up too. Even if it's outside of your sphere of awareness, your general audible hearing range, your subconscious still picks it up, right? This can be proven through memory recollection exercises such as the Palace, where you construct an entire environment to be able to revisit memories and past information. You can go to this mental construct and recall bits of data that you previously would never have been able to even imagine that you had stored there, including what color socks that random person was wearing while you're walking down the street while you were busy reading a book or whatever. You know, your subconscious mind is literally keeping track of everything all around you. It doesn't matter whether you're paying attention to it or not. It doesn't matter whether you can see it or you can hear it. You will. There's all sorts of things that your subconscious can do, and I'm trying to leave it as open as possible to keep your imagination out there, so that way you can start to walk away from this and go, oh wow, that TV in the other room still programming me in this room. Yes, still doing it. Okay, advertisements in billboards. Billboards are a big one. These are individual frequency producers that emit powerful subconscious commands to their audience. And we walk around and go, McDonald's? Nah, I'm not interested in that. The subconscious is keeping track of the whole thing. It's very interested. It's not necessarily interested in going and splurging on a Big Mac, but it's very interested in whatever you're paying attention to, even the things that you don't. So your subconscious is really difficult when we start putting it into measurement and frameworks, aside from the fact that everybody has different capacities, because it goes to ranges that we don't know. We border on to the realms of what we know we don't know in the subconscious, or when we step it up further into the superconscious, we get much more into the unknown unknowns, a lot less known knowns, and just a few known unknowns. But the superconscious is that one that really pushes people. For the most part, in general neuroscience, it's considered to be the part of your awareness that doesn't originate from anywhere in your brain. That's a pretty bad definition of something that's pretty epic, like your superconscious. We would prefer to have a really specific description of something that's so integral to our daily experience or our daily identity, but that's what we've got to work with at the moment, is that your superconscious comes from somewhere else outside of you. Yeah, interestingly enough. So with that in mind, in contrast to your conscious and your subconscious, you've then got grounds for what all of our esoteric histories have all been about from most of the cultures around the world. They're generally consensual on the fact that there is this aspect of your mind or awareness field that A, leaves your body when you die, and B, for the most part, isn't part of your physical body. It's defined in many different ways across the traditions, and so sounds a little bit different from step to step, but you get into the meaning of what people are trying to communicate through the restrictions of their language, and you definitely get a feel that they're talking about the same sort of thing. I mean, until you start to experience it, and then that's when you go, okay, yeah, that's exactly what they're talking about. So your superconscious mind is generally referred to as a super quantum computer. The more respected individuals out there who know about this sort of stuff more suggest that it is To suggest that it's limited to something that we can make is a complete insult. It'd be much more appropriate to suggest that your superconscious is equivalent in computing power to, say, the universe itself. There's all sorts of amazing things that you can get into with it. And we will be doing focus videos on the subconscious, the superconscious, and how they interact and the different mechanisms between them. So stay tuned for those, and we'll keep you posted on when they're coming about. But to get on train with the second part of this video, I really wanted to bring into our awareness what we call boundaries. And this is kind of like the counter to it, or the devil's advocate for everything that I've just said so far, is that your conscious and your subconscious mind, your superconscious mind, there's no definitions here. Your subconscious mind isn't at the back of your mind here, actually at right about there is your visual cortex of the mind. So you're consciously using that pretty often if you use your sight. So when we say your conscious mind is up here, you're actually using it in all different bits and places, and it's not just locked in here. If you put an EEG machine on your brain and you start to think consciously, like reading a book or just think about what you did yesterday, you'll notice that brain activity extends across the entire spectrum of the brain, usually in a disjointed, rather ugly looking pattern, or rather chaotic looking. That's what I mean by ugly. Everything is beautiful. Ugly just means not coherent, not apparently coherent, I should say. And this is, again, the boundaries sort of thing. So where are these boundaries that we're drawing between the conscious, the subconscious, and the superconscious? The boundaries are wherever the bloody hell we want, because they're our boundaries, and they're the boundaries that we define in order to be able to express ourselves, to be able to then test ourselves. And if the tests work out well, then we can then build upon that. If we can build upon that, then it's suggesting that it's got a pretty good solid foundation to be built upon. If we try to build upon it and it falls apart, then we've got to go back to our foundations and restart again. These boundaries that we have are foundational through everything. And there is nothing in this world that you could suggest that has a defined boundary that is uncrossable in some way or another. Every single paradox can be resolved. Paradoxes are dichotomies, so every single dichotomy can be brought back to a singular, which means that opposites are the same, which means that polarities are the same, like a magnet. And we know these things. It's just that in our daily experience, these boundaries and these definitions we don't like to define, because they've been defined for us by our schools, by our institutions, by our entertainment. Do you know how many boundaries, social boundaries, are dictated through what we call entertainment, TV, news, media? It's pretty much exactly where they all come from, right? We construct our own. And then we go to school, and everyone at school's been watching TV, and if you try to do your own thing, very quickly your subconscious mind goes, that's not a good idea to step out of line. Because very quickly everyone starts to look at you. People start to point and go, wow, what do you think? You're different or something? Who do you think you are? You know? And we begin bringing each other down all over the place. These boundaries that we have are there for us to be able to use constructively. No boundary is there as a detrimental aspect. Shouldn't be there as a detrimental aspect. And I do my best not to use words like shouldn't, but these boundaries are something that we need to be aware of, because as I define things like conscious, subconscious, and superconscious, we're not here to say, well, that's full of crap, because the conscious mind doesn't just exist at the front here. It extends all the way through the brain. It's like, yes, we know that, okay? It's like saying the left brain is completely and utterly masculine. Well, it is and it isn't. I'm sure that if you were to think some masculine thoughts with an EEG machine on, some of your right brain will become activated, which means that your masculine thoughts that you're thinking are not just in your left brain, but also in your right brain. But generally speaking, we have these boundaries and they're pretty cool, but we need to remember that a boundary is optional. Okay? As an example, as the final example of this, you're looking at me right here, right now, and this is a good example because clearly I've got some pretty sharp lines around me, right? Some pretty defining edges. Gets a bit blurry around this part. Defined all the way up along here, right? These are all definitions that we call definitions. Who are we to make these judgments? Who are we to decide these things? To begin with, everything that you can see right now is generally accepted to be 0.01% of the entire light spectrum. Of all light, not visible light, of all light, you can see me existing through all of these colors as 0.00, I'm thinking of another number, 0.01% of all light. Okay? So then to turn around and suggest that, well, you're the governing official on how everything reacts in light is a bit of a statement. Especially because it doesn't take too much to realize that I don't just stop at my boundary here. If I had, and I do out in the shed, but I'm not getting it right now, maybe another time, a multimeter, I might be able to detect small ranges of electrical pulses in the air around me simply because my bits and pieces, my organs, my lungs, my gut, especially the heart, brain, the whole lot of it, they emit electromagnetic auras, electromagnetic frequencies. They exist in an electromagnetic field, right? I had it hidden away because I was nursing my daughter. These things exist in electromagnetic fields. So, barriers. Sorry, I got distracted thinking about my daughter. So the artificial barriers of the human body are really obvious to be extended when we think about information instead of boundaries. So if we just colloquially define anything as information, then we can clearly see that I have information here, I have information here, here, here in this exact line right there, there's information. And then right here outside of that line, if there was no image behind me, there would still be information there. And there's still information all the way around here, all the way out here. Right. The heart has a huge electromagnetic field. Huge. Okay? And some people can range up to, they say, about 30 feet. Right? That's how big your electromagnetic field goes. That's how far you break your own barriers that you thought you were confined to all the way up until this point. And now you can walk around going, wow, that's great. Thank you, Mr. Wealthy Warlock. Now I know I'm an electrical field that goes beyond my skin bag. Yes, congratulations. You're not just a skin bag full of meat and useless stuff that's going to dry up and die in a fizzled out, boring old universe that means nothing. You're a lot more important than that. And that's what we'll get to talking about as we move on through these videos. Right? Just checking my list to make sure I've touched on everything. Defining our boundaries. We're going to get, like I said earlier, we're going to get into talking about in another video how the subconscious and the superconscious interact with one another and the variations between them. But this is just a basic one to get sort of a hierarchy understanding of what I will be using as a model of consciousness within what we call the human, what I call the human biome. sphere of awareness or field of existence or universe. Quite use that, can use that fairly often. So without rambling on too much, the next focus point on subconscious interaction is things like how we really underestimate that we do not know. It happens all the time. All the time. Okay, I'm talking to somebody and I'll say, yeah, what about your subconscious? And they'll say, oh yeah, it's kind of like this. And it's like, really? How did you find that out? Because if you could do that, that would be really interesting. As a little bit of homework, I want you to try changing something that you like into something you dislike, or changing something you dislike into something you like. And make it interesting as you do. Some of you out there who do this sort of stuff know exactly what I'm talking about and can change their likes and dislikes in a drop of a hat. Yes, congratulations. We know you're special. Let's not jump ahead of the class too far. And if you are, then by all means, jump ahead and go to a different video. This is the first one, and we're just starting small. So, in the meantime, until the next one comes out, have fun, rewatch this, share it with your friends, get out there and be the change you want to see in this world. I cannot emphasize that enough, okay? Talking, perfectly fine. Communicating, perfectly fine. To change the world, do, be, and exist. Okay, that requires action and interaction between fields of awareness or fields of consciousness. Thank you so much for joining me. Sorry for the delay for those who had been waiting for my first video here. Yeah, as it turns out, I just went through and recorded an entirely new video because the previous one that I did required that much editing that it didn't make any sense when I tried to put it together. So I'd have to cut too much out. I just went, bugger it, I'll do it again. So I hope you enjoy. Let me know, and don't forget to subscribe. Peace out.